All right, and we are live. Hello, everyone. My name is Adrian Carmona, and I'm glad to join you all for yet another edition of the Varsity Live Postgame Show. If you were here for our pregame show at 6 p.m. over there in the West Coast, we had the preview for many games, including Saguaro, Dobson, Horizon, Brophy, Mountain View, and Nogales. And lucky for you guys, we will be giving you all the recap and post-game report of all of those games that just went on tonight. And with that, we are just going to get right into it. So starting off today, we're going to have Bella, who's going to be giving us the recap and post-game report of the Saguaro game. So how's it going?
Hi. We just finished up the Saguaro and Chaparral game. And Saguaro won. They got their first win of the season. It's 35-21, I believe. And our players of the game were Garrett Martin and Elias Johnson. Both had an amazing game. Their quarterback scored 4 touchdowns, I believe. And it was just a great game overall for the Saber Cats.
Awesome. Good to see Saguaro getting their first win of the season. Thank you very much, Bella, for your post-game report. Have a good night. All right, so that was Bella starting us off with the Saguaro post-game report. Very big game for them. They finally get their first win of the season. One of the better defensive performances that we've seen from them so far this year. Very good to see a young team like that with a new coach getting on the win column for the first time this year. So now we're going to take it on over to Jesse Davis, who's going to be giving us the post-game report on the Dobson game. Jesse, how's it going?
Good. How are you doing, Adrian?
I'm doing awesome.
Yeah, so I had the pleasure of covering Dobson and Skyline, and this game was all about defense. Skyline finished the game 22-0, and the score was very non-receptive of what the game was. It was Dobson's defense or Skyline's defense that was really the story of the game. They had 5 turnovers, including 3 inside the red zone, and yeah, it was a great game. Dobson definitely had their looks offensively. They had a pitch that was fumbled and then an interception in the red zone, and the score doesn't really reflect how the game went because it was very back and forth. But yeah, the main thing was Skyline's defense, and then both teams were, pretty undisciplined. There was definitely a lot of flags in the game, and I think that Skyline did a good job of playing above the flags and not letting that, get them off their game, and yeah, so they just did a marvelous job of denying Dobson from getting on the scoreboard.
Awesome. Yeah, as you said, very defensive-oriented game. Well, with that, thank you very much, Jesse, for your post-game report. Have a good night.
Absolutely, you too.
All right. Well, big thank you to Jesse, who just gave us the post-game report on Dobson. Um, as he highlighted, very big defensive game, as highlighted by all those red zone turnovers, as he described. Also, very flag oriented, a lot of penalties on both sides right there. So, as we continue, we're going to transition over to Tomasa, who is going to be giving us the Horizon post game report. How's it going tonight?
It's going good. Yeah, so I was able to cover Horizon versus Desert Mountain. Desert Mountain was 6-0, but now Horizon took the win tonight, and it was 23-10, I believe, and it was pretty crazy. Desert Mountain decided to step it up towards the end, but Horizon quarterback Jace Ashley took a nice trick play, and it was so surprising to the whole crowd. I didn't even see that coming, and it was just like so shockingly, like it was really good. So it was nice to see Horizon step it up and take a win against a nice region game tonight. And yeah.
Awesome. Great to hear. Well, thank you so much for Tomasa for joining us tonight. Hope you have a good rest of your night.
Thank you.
All right. Big thank you to Tomasa, for giving us the post-game report on the Horizon game. Crazy to see as they hand Desert Mountain their first loss of the season. A lot of crazy things going on in these post-game reports as we see. Sorry about that. Still recovering from a sickness. So as we wait for the rest of our guests to show up, I want to remind everyone, if you are just joining us now, we are currently going through the post-game reports of all the games over there in the Arizona West Coast area. We have just gone over the Saguaro post-game and Dobson post-game, and we have just finished with the Horizon post-game as they handed Desert Mountain their first loss of the season. And we are going to now transition over to Marcos, who's going to give us the Mountain View post-game report. So, Marcos, how's it going?
It's going well. How are you?
Doing great.
So, I was here tonight at Mountain View High School, home of the Toros, and they defeated the Mesa Jackrabbits by a score of 63-30. It was a really good game for the offense of the Toros. There were touchdowns from Talon Arnett. He had about 3 touchdowns on the night, and the quarterback also played well, Brady Goodman, and then a record performance from Reese Bodley tonight, breaking the Toros rushing record with 318 yards. So impressive performance offensively. And then on the other side of the things for the Jackrabbits, their returner, Holland, he had a kickoff return touchdown. He was just effective on special teams, making big plays on that side of the ball. Almost had another kickoff return touchdown that was called back for a penalty, but overall just pure dominance from one of the best teams in the state, the Toros. So 63-30 win, and they're really getting their momentum going into the playoffs soon to start.
Awesome. Yeah, very big win for them as we get an inch closer to playoff football over there. Thank you very much, Marcos, for your post-game report. Have a good night.
Thank you. You too.
All right, so that was Marcos giving us the post-game report on the Mountain View game. As you said, a lot of records being broken there with the running back setting the single-game record for rushing yards in a game. Very interesting to see a 63-30 win. Not something you expect a lot to see. I mean, it's not every day you see a team score 30 and still lose by 33 in the same game. Kind of like when the Miami Dolphins beat the Denver Broncos last year 70-20. It's like, how do you score 20 points and still lose by 50? Crazy stuff. So I want to thank you all for joining so far. We are currently giving a post-game report on all the games we highlighted in the Varsity Live pregame show, if you were here for that. We just went over Saguaro, Dobson, Horizon, and Mountain View. Sorry. A lot of crazy things going on today. Saguaro takes their first win of the season. 0-6 before they grabbed their first win. They won their game 35-21, one of the best defensive performances for them this year. Really just getting on the win column for such a young team with a new coach. Very inspiring for that team. Their defense really did step up. As Jay said in our pregame show, their defense did need to step up after they were averaging 30 points given up, and they did just that, only giving up 21, and just getting that defense rolling quickly. Very good to see them get their first win of the season. Tomasa gave us the Horizon post-game report as they handed Desert Mountain their first loss. As Mason told us in the pregame show, he was really expecting a good game, and that is exactly what we got over there, handing Desert Mountain their first loss of the season. Marcos just gave us the Mountain View postgame reports that DeWitt gave us in that pregame show, and just a lot of very interesting games, a lot of good games going on as we wait for the postgame reports on Nogales and Brophy. Nogales was very big for the Varsity Sports Show, as this is our first time covering their games. So very excited to see what they have to say about that game. But as we wait, once again, thank you all for joining. Really hope you guys were also there for the Varsity National Live Postgame Show, where we were giving you a postgame show very similar to this, except we were highlighting games from other parts of the country. We had Jameer join us as he gave us his postgame report on high school games in Indiana. And I also gave a postgame report on sports going on in Florida. There were a lot, and I mean a lot of games going on in the state of Florida. A lot of very good games too, a lot of rivalries, because now we're in the point of football season where these games start to count for postseason seeding, and there are just a lot of playoff implications starting to happen with these games. So, I mean, just to give you a little hint of what was going on in Florida as we wait for our last few guests to join. A lot of top 25 teams played. Number 19 Northwestern, who was actually coached by former NFL quarterback Teddy Bridgewater. That's his alma mater. He's now the head coach for that team. They defeated Columbus 23-18, just taking care of business as usual. What's funny is that there were actually two teams actually played twice this week. There was a game on Monday between American Heritage and Norland, in which Norland won 32-27 thanks to a game-winning touchdown. American Heritage played again against Archbishop McCarthy, and they won in dominating fashion, shut them out. And then Norland played at home. They're ranked number 7. They played number 6 Central, and number 6 Central ended up squeaking out a win against them 22-14. New Orleans quarterback Enor Yapor once again had another great game. He's just one of those classic dual threat quarterbacks that can really do everything. He had a great game, but it wasn't enough. Central's defense played really well. They ended up getting a safety, and they were just containing the New Orleans offense all night. They only got that 14 points towards the end of the game, kind of just garbage time touchdown. But yeah, it was actually a very interesting game too, because Norland actually beat Central in last year's 2M regional championship. So it was a playoff rematch between those two schools. And once again, very interesting. So as we wait for our last few guests to arrive, we are currently waiting for the post-game reports on Brophy and Nogales. I want to thank you all for joining this edition, once again, of Varsity Live Postgame Show. It's all right. We just had a lot of very interesting postgame reports from Saguaro, Dobson, Horizon, and Mountain View. Some big news. Saguaro grabs their first win of the season. Very inspiring for them, especially with their new head coach and a young team. Very interesting watching that defense step up in a big way. In another news, Horizon handed Desert Mountain their first loss of the season as they defeated them. Another very interesting game. Mountain View was also a very interesting game. We had some records set in that matchup. And of course, the Dobson game, also a very good matchup between those two schools. But, of course, high school wasn't the only football being played tonight. We had some college football that was played earlier this Friday evening. FSU lost to Duke 23-16. They lost to Duke for the first time in their school's history. That's kind of insane to think about. Once again, FSU is just struggling to find success at the quarterback position. They started Brock Glenn, who was their third string last season. He was sat behind Jordan Travis and Tate Rodemaker. Jordan Travis, as you probably know, suffered a very gruesome leg injury last year, and then Tate Rodemaker got hurt in the game against Florida. And then Brock Glenn basically started the rest of that game and in the ACC championship last year. So he made, I believe it was his first full start of the season against Duke. Once again, just costly turnovers for FSU and not being able to move the ball downfield. Their only touchdown in the game was a kick return to start the second half. But yeah, So they lost to Duke for the first time in franchise history. They're now down to 1-6 on the season. So they would now need to win the last 5 games of the year to become bowl eligible. Duke, still in October, already becomes bowl eligible as they move to 6-1 on the season. Their defense looks really good, but of course that offense does need a little bit of work. But still very inspiring to see that team contend in the ACC. Other than that, Oregon dominated Purdue. I mean, who's really surprised about that? They're the number 2 ranked team in the country for a reason. And other than that, we are just waiting here for the last 2 guests to finish up that game. Brophy and Nogales. Those reports will be coming very soon. Very sorry for the wait, but once again, I want to thank all of you for joining us tonight. We've already had a lot of very interesting post-game reports from my fellow coworkers and interns at the Varsity Sports Show. We have gotten post-game reports from Saguaro, Dobson, Horizon, and Mountain View. If you are joining us, we are going to be giving you the recaps and post-game reports on the games that we were highlighting in the Varsity Live pregame show if you were tuned into that. Saguaro gets their first win of the season. They won 35-21. Very inspiring win for them, especially with Darius Kelly, their new head coach, first-year head coach. Very inspiring for that team to get to snag their first win of the season. Also very inspiring to see that defense actually step up this season. If you were here for that pregame report, Jace mentioned how the defense had been giving up over 30 points a game this season. So holding the opposition to 21 and grabbing your first win on the win column, very inspiring for that team. Tomasa gave us the Horizon postgame report, and they handed Desert Mountain their first loss of the season. They were 6-0 heading into this game. 6-game winning streak gets snapped by Horizon. Marcos gave us the post-game report on Mountain View. A lot of records set in that game. 63-30 final score of that. And I guess as we wait, I can yap a little bit more about University of Florida, where I go to school. Gators have had a very, I don't even know what words to describe it. Up and down is probably the best. I mean, inconsistency is probably what I would use to describe it. Currently 3-3. Our last game was against Tennessee on the road in Knoxville, top 10 team in the nation. If you were to tell me that we would have gone overtime against them, I would have been happy. But I actually watched the game and I was very frustrated because there were several opportunities that we had to win. And of course, like anything that Gators do recently, they choked it. Yeah, it was tough. Our starting quarterback, Graham Mertz, unfortunately suffered a bad injury. He injured his leg in the middle of a drive and then ended up scoring a touchdown, throwing a touchdown to our tight end, Arlen Sportingham, in that drive. Then it was then later found out that he actually tore his ACL before throwing the touchdown pass. So he is now out for the season. Very heartbreaking because he was such an integral part to our team and really just the heart and soul. And yeah, it was just very, very heartbreaking to see that. It'll be interesting to see what true freshman DJ Lagway does for the team now, as he's going to be starting the rest of the year. It's going to be very interesting to see how he performs, considering the Gators are now heading into the toughest part of their schedule by far. They still have to play against LSU, at Texas, who is the number 1 team in the nation. They still have to play against Ole Miss and Georgia. So that is 4 of the top 25 teams in the nation. UF already had one of the hardest schedules in all of college football, arguably the hardest going into the season, and now they enter the witching hour of their schedule. with a true freshman at quarterback who did play well in his first start in Samford earlier this year in week 2. But he's going to be facing probably the hardest stretch of games he'll probably ever have in college. Because, I mean, facing these 4 teams the last, 5 games? And then you got to end off the season at FSU, which it doesn't matter if FSU is 1-6. Playing at that stadium is no joke, and you really have to be built for that area. But yeah, if you're just joining us now, I want to thank you all for joining another edition of the Varsity Live Postgame Show. We have just gotten some postgame reports from a lot of great games going on from some schools: Saguaro, Dobson, Horizon, and Mountain View. Saguaro, if you do not know, grabbed their first win of the season. Once again, just a very inspirational win for them as their defense stepped up. The team really just came together and finally got their first win of the season under their new head coach, Darius Kelly. So once again, very inspiring to see. Horizon handed Desert Mountain their first loss of the season. And once again, we just have a lot of very important games. We're nearing that midseason point of football where all of these games count towards postseason. A lot of games with postseason implications going on now, not just in high school football, but in college football and in the NFL. A lot of these games matter even more now, and a lot of these schools also had their homecoming weekend. So I honestly wish I was in our guest's shoes right now covering these games live, because those atmospheres must have been electric. Sorry, still recovering from a sickness, a little bit of sore throat, but we move. And yeah, as I was saying, a lot of really great games that happened. And yeah, a lot of good stuff. And with that, we are going to sign off with the Varsity Postgame Report Show. I want to thank everyone once again for joining us on another lovely Friday night. Hope you were able to tune into our pregame and our Varsity National Live postgame show. My name is Adrian Carmona, signing off from the Varsity Sports Show. Thank you, everyone, and have a great night.